Hey, hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo, and my hair's all over the place. Good morning, November 1st, 2022. Wow. Amazing how the months just keep rolling, time just keeps flying, and we keep doing devotions. And that's what we keep doing. Hey, it doesn't matter what happened yesterday in the sense that today we got another day. Certainly it matters, but you know what? Today's another day, so why not get into the Word? Take a little bit in the morning, just take a little bit of the focus off of everything else, and let's just kind of get into it. So the morning devos are usually at 9 o'clock, Monday through Friday. Always check out the archives at my YouTube channel, Bo Willette. And very excited to see Bob once again in the house of devotion. Man, what a wonderful man that guy is. And it's great to have him here. A lot of wisdom there. And we're going to get right into it. 1 Samuel chapter 24. Good times. Here we go. It says, after Saul returned from fighting the Philistines. So Saul goes and tries to fight David, tries to kill David, and David hides in the wilderness. And then the Philistines start attacking Israel. And upon them attacking Israel, Saul has to kind of stop his quest to go after David. And he's got to now, defend Israel. So he takes his military and he kind of moves them into an area where they can now fight the Philistines. And so after Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told that David had gone into the wilderness of En-Gedi. So Saul chose 3,000 elite troops from all Israel and went to search for David and his men near the rocks of the wild goats. Now, it wasn't too long ago in our country that we were on the quest to take out a terrorist. And you might remember that was a very, very popular event in United States military history. And it was one where a certain particular man was hiding out in the caves. And we had to literally take elite military men and women and go in there. And, I'm not sure. I didn't watch any documentary on it. And I don't know if women were involved in it or who exactly was involved, what men were involved. But we know it was pretty high up people, right? So we can really relate to this. Saul is taking his 3,000, Navy SEALs, I don't know, Green Berets, No, it wasn't Saddam Hussein. It was what? Osama bin Laden. Remember that? Yeah, we had to go find that guy in the cracks and in the caves. And we ended up finding him, I think, in a cave. I think that's where the military did find him. But it's kind of very Saul and David-like, right? Going after David, looking for him in the caves, of En-Gedi. And, if you've ever seen, if you've ever have you ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls? If you've ever looked them up online, the Dead Sea Scrolls and where they were found, and they were old manuscripts, very important ones, by the way. I'm not going to get into that right now. But if you just look it up, Dead Sea Scrolls, and look up kind of the caves, you'll find these interesting caves in the Middle East. And you'll go, whoa, you can start kind of seeing how, man, it must be hard to find people, if they get lost in these areas. So, hey, good morning, Tina. It's very good seeing you. Or knowing you're in the comment corner. Not really seeing you, but seeing you in the comment corner, that is. Now, it says at the place where these Saul was sending his 3,000 troops, David and his men were near the rocks of the wild goats. Okay, so they're kind of by areas of wild goats. And at that place where the road passes some sheepfolds, Saul went into the cave to relieve himself. But as it happened, David and his men were hiding further back in the cave. Interesting, right? And so a lot of sheepfolds, a lot of sheep, a lot of goats. It says, now is your opportunity. This is what the men of David whispered to him. Today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power, to do with as you wish. So David crept forward and cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. Couple interesting things here. One of them is that sometimes we get whispers from people that mean well, but it's just not the right thing to do. Can you remember in the New Testament where Peter is having a little time with Jesus, and Peter, bless him, right? He says, hey, Jesus, you're not going to die, man. No way. That's not going to happen. And what did, Peter meant well. Peter didn't want to see his rabbi die. And so Peter means well, but it just wasn't the right thing to say, right? And Jesus had to rebuke Peter and say, get behind me, Satan, right? Meaning the message Peter was giving wasn't from the Lord, right? It was very adversarial to what really the will of God was. And I think in my life sometimes, maybe a lot of times, I'm not so discerning as to, is that really the voice of God, or is that really the voice of, the enemy? Am I really listening and being able to hear people properly when they talk to me? Can I recognize the will of God, and can I recognize, something that's really, it might sound okay, but it's just really not of the Lord, And this is a great instance, right, where the men of David are loved by David. And they say to him, hey, Saul's right there, and it sounded right. But yet, David, what does he do? David just creeps in and he cuts a little piece of the hem of Saul's robe. Now, in the Torah, or what we went through in the first 5 books of the Bible, we read about the Jewish garments that they would wear. And that they would wear these tassels. And I actually put up a picture of a tassel so you guys could see this white and blue tassel. And it was to represent God's provision and his just ever love for them. And so they were to wear that as like a little badge, where every time it was sewn into the garment, where when they saw the tassels, they would be reminded of God's provision, his power, his protection, all those things, just by looking at the tassels. So David comes to Saul and he chops this off. Very, wow, kind of bold, right? Kind of one of those things where, God, is it a taking away of God's power and his provision and his place? Is it a way that David says, hey man, you're not to be the king? Come on, man. That kind of thing. And it's like, but when David's conscience began to bother him because he had cut Saul's robe, so he cuts it, and David then starts feeling bad about it. It says, the Lord knows I shouldn't have done that to my Lord the king, he said to his men. The Lord forbid that I should do this to my Lord the king and attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him. So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. Powerful words. Bob says, great picture of forgiveness and humility. Wow, amazing. Now notice this. What is David sensitive towards when it seems like an act of mercy is done, right? David acts in mercy towards Saul. He does not kill him when he could. But what is David thinking of? Did I do the right thing, Lord? Was that really the right thing before you? I mean, you anointed this guy. You, Lord, put Saul in this place of being the king of Israel. You know, is what I did right? And he started pondering that and thinking through that. And I think that's great. You know, that's the introspection that we want to have in our life. It's a great picture of introspection that we see in the Bible here. A lot of times we don't see that kind of, detail of someone looking into their own heart. But here we see it, right? And from verse 5 there on, right? And he says, man, the Lord forbid that I should do this to the Lord, the King, my King. David recognizes the position that Saul has is from God. And therefore, it's to be respected and honored. And, David is probably, conscious of how he acted in doing it. Was he cocky in the way he acted? Was he, where was his heart at? And this is his contemplation before God. And this is something that's beautiful to do before God. Always. God, where's my heart? Was I sensitive towards that person? Was I not? Did I respect that person? Did I honor that person? Does that person deserve honor? Does Saul deserve honor? Well, no. He's very selfish, very super narcissistic guy, right? Very muddled, but David knew that he too wasn't, all that. And he knew he needed God's mercy. And he also knew God's work in Saul. He also remembers Saul was a guy who did prophesy with the prophets. He had time with Samuel, the priest, the prophet, the judge, So David, knows Saul's place and position in Israel. Do I? When I think of those that are put in positions in our land, in our world, do I see it as the sovereign hand of God? Putting people in place, moving the pieces, and can I give them any honor? Or do I just ridicule? Do I just, tear apart, tear down, tear asunder? How's my heart towards them? That's something that can be convicting, right? Yeah, it's easy to look at political people especially and just tear them down. Or people that are in other churches and just tear them down. And I have to be careful and very conscious of my attitudes. And this is what David's doing. And it says, so David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. After Saul had left the cave and gone on his way, David came out and shouted after him, my Lord, my King. Notice how he addresses him, my Lord, my King. His anointed, right? Anointed, Messiah, right? That's the idea that we get from the term Messiah, right? Anointed one, Now there's a big Messiah, big M, Messiah, and then there's little M's. And here we see the little ones. God uses people, right? And it says, so David came out and shouted after him. And he said, my Lord, my King. And when Saul looked around, David bowed low before him. Wow, what a humbling act, right? Then he shouted to Saul, why do you listen to the people who say I am trying to harm you? This very day you can see with your own eyes it isn't true. For the Lord placed you at my mercy back there in the cave. Some of my men told me to kill you, but I spared you, for I said I will never harm the king, for he is the Lord's anointed one. Wow, there it is, the anointed one again. Now, this term is used not only of people that are doing well, but people that also are foreigners. God calls a foreign king a anointed one through the prophet Isaiah. So it's very interesting. Saul is called the anointed one. Foreign kings are called anointed if they're used by God in these specific ways that affect Israel. And of course, there's the big anointed one, Jesus, is called the Messiah. Jesus Christ. Christ means Messiah, anointed one. Yeah, Jesus is the Messiah, right? Christ isn't his last name, it's his title, right? He is the Messiah. And he says, hey, I would never harm the king. Look, my father, at what I have in my hand. And he says, my father, because, David's married to his daughter. And he says, it's a piece of your hem of your robe. I cut it off, but I didn't kill you. This proves that I am not trying to harm you and that I have not sinned against you, even though you have been hunting me and trying to kill me. May the Lord judge between us. And I love David's idea. Let's just bring this before God. Let's bring it before God and let God be the judge. Hey, let God judge our hearts. Wouldn't that be great if you were in an argument, or I was in an argument, or, you're in some situation, you're at your home, maybe you're married, and, you just say, hey, let's let God judge us. May God judge our hearts. Whoa, man, that's serious, right? Now it's like, okay, I'm not going to try to win my way here. I'm not going to try to get my way. But now may the Lord judge our hearts. It's hard for me to bag too much on politicians, because you know what I see in them? I see me. And that's the honest truth. I see a reflection of me in them. And then I have to take a step back and go, that's right. I need mercy. I need grace. Just as they do. No different. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you are trying to do to me. Love what David says. Hey, perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you are trying to do. Maybe. We'll see what God does. How God moves in your life. How God speaks to you. I trust God's going to do something. I don't have to try to control a situation today, because perhaps God will do something. See, God's big enough to move. God's big enough to do something. And if I really believe that, then maybe I don't have to manipulate, coerce, force, right? Push into place, right? Maybe I don't have to do that. Maybe I can just learn to love my neighbor and learn to love my enemy and do good to people. And perhaps God will do the moving. Yeah. Great faith here, right? As the old proverb says, right? From evil people come evil deeds. I wonder where he got that proverb. So you can be sure I will never harm you. Who is the king of Israel trying to catch anyway? Should he spend his time chasing one who is as worthless as a dead dog or a single flea? So David kind of gives a little message, meaning, man, out of your heart, right? From evil people come evil deeds, man. Like, perhaps God will punish you for what you're doing. We're going to see how the Lord's going to move. Let's let the Lord judge, And he says, man, I'm not trying to harm you. And David, in a sense, is just saying, hey, man, I'm not the one who's going nuts right now, Saul. Like, think through this. You're spending your time chasing me? Who am I? What is my position? David sees himself quite humble. A flea? A dead dog? I would think of David a little more than that. I wonder how church leadership sees themselves. I wonder if we see ourselves more than a flea, a dead dog. But maybe we see ourselves greater when we need to see ourselves lesser. Yeah. You're in your leadership, in your life. We all lead in some way. How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself overly amazing? Or is there a humility there where you're able to understand that, you need grace, you need mercy, you need God, to do a work. May the Lord therefore judge which of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate, and he will rescue me from your power. Oh, I love that. Isn't that great? What does David know, though? God is his what? Advocate. Don't we all need advocates? Someone to come alongside, someone to help out, someone who is able to, brush up with you during the difficult times, during the times where you know you're guilty, right? God's able to punish the guilty one. God's able to do that. God will judge. And it says, he is my advocate. He will rescue me from your power. Whoa. I love this, even when it comes to just Jesus. Hey, Jesus will rescue me from whatever enemy's power. Jesus will rescue you from whomever, whatever power that comes against you. Man, that's pretty awesome. He is your greatest advocate, right? We have a lawyer, right? An advocate from the Father, it says in the New Testament, right? In the book of 1 John. We have an advocate from the Father, Jesus Christ, right? This is what Jesus is. He is our advocate. He is the one who comes by us. And he says, not guilty. He has declared us right, righteous. Even though we are sinners, he has declared us right by faith. This is the great teaching of the book of Romans and Galatians and many others. But so when David had finished speaking, Saul called back, "Is this really you, my son David?" Then he began to cry. And he said to David, "You are a better man than I am, for you have repaid me good for evil. Yes, you have been amazingly kind to me today, for when the Lord put me in a place where you could have killed me, you didn't do it. Who else would let this enemy get away when he had him in his power? May the Lord reward you well for your kindness, for you have shown me today, and now I realize that you are surely going to be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will flourish under your rule. Now swear to me by the Lord that when that happens, you will not kill my family and destroy my line of descendants." Now you see where Saul's fear comes from, right? Oh, you're going to destroy everything I built up, everything, all my descendants are going to be wiped out. Now this is kind of the way, I think, of ancient world, right? Where sometimes they would just wipe out the previous king and, his brothers and family, kids, prince, this kind of thing. And Saul is so bound up with this fear that he just has been on the run to kill, to chase after David. But now we see this confession of like, man, I've been in the wrong. You're right, David. That sermon you just gave, David, man, it's penetrated my heart. And I have been doing evil. And you are a better man than I am. You could have killed me, but you didn't. And I realize you're going to be king. Wow. Really amazing chapter where Saul now comes out and just says what is true. David, you're going to be the king, man. You're it. And boy, it has taken a lot of working on Saul to get him to say this, right? Just a little bit of humility. Maybe I'm not all that. Maybe I have so many issues. Maybe I don't deserve to be where I'm at. Maybe someone else needs to be in the position I'm in. Those kind of thoughts, man, are humbling thoughts. But they're ones that we need to have available in our mind, so that we can, again, bring things up to the Lord and say, Lord, you be the judge. You do a work. Lord, for right now, I'm in this position, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, to the glory of God. But Lord, if it's time for anything, for me to move or do whatever, you do that work. And so I love that kind of idea there is, be talking to God, and perhaps God will move you on, Saul finally is at a place where he's ready to hear that. He's okay with that kind of thing. David, you are supposed to be king. Quite humbling statement for sure. So David promised this to Saul and with an oath, and Saul went home, but David and his men went back to their stronghold. So maybe we think this is all going to end and it's all going to be good and that's the end of everything. So we will see how this plays out. Wouldn't it be nice if it was just like, hey man, Saul got it, great, but it's just not that way, right? It just doesn't work that way. So a lot of good things in the chapter, a lot of good things to think about, but remembering, hey, there's a lot of Jesus here too, right? There's a lot of Jesus in this passage. He is our advocate. He's the one who, defends us from the judgment, that is coming our way because of our guilt, right? We all, in a sense, have been spared, right? We all have been spared. Our lives have been spared. We have eternal life in Christ. That's pretty awesome. So you guys have a great day. Man, there's a lot of good stuff there to think about throughout the day. So, hey, I'll be doing that. You too. Okay? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.